Most of us have heard psychiatrists claim that if a child or an adult is acting abnormal, they may have a chemical imbalance in their brain. And while this even sounds far-fetched, you may think that there's some science behind that claim. You see, years ago, as the psychiatric industry was losing ground to the conventional talking therapies of the day, they had to invent an apparent medical, scientific-sounding source of people's problems so they could recapture the market share that they were losing. The answer was to establish in the minds of Americans the brain chemical imbalance theory of behavioral disorders. And hot on the heels of this new theory came the chemical balancers, new, powerful, mind-altering drugs that would solve all of our problems. Unfortunately, the cures were as fraudulent and dangerous as the diagnoses. My name is Dave Figueroa. Stay tuned as we expose psychiatry's chemical imbalance scam. In order to fully understand how psychiatry has advanced the theory of a chemical imbalance in the brain as the source of problems for both children and adults alike, it's necessary to go back to the early 1960s when psychiatrists were involved with extensive experiments with LSD. Psychiatrists participated in the CIA's MK-Ultra mind control project, which ran for several years and included numerous other projects that involved drugs, electric shock, and other means to manipulate human behavior. They found that they could create full-blown psychosis with tiny chemical doses of LSD. As reported by author Robert Coughlin in the March 15, 1963 edition of Life magazine, psychiatrists concluded that if psychotic behavior could be induced from a tiny amount of a chemical like LSD, then normal behavior must depend on extremely fine chemical balances. So they made the decision that all abnormal behaviors and insanity must likewise be caused by tiny chemical imbalances. They interpreted this leap of logic as proof that only a minute chemical balance separated the normal from the insane. They figured since they could create insanity with drugs, they could also create sanity by handling so-called chemical imbalances with drugs like LSD and others.
This 1965 report came from a psychiatrist who said, quote, "All children who were given LSD daily for 1 month were said to have improved. Side effects, toxic reactions, and regressive behavior were not encountered. The findings indicated most favorable results." Contrary to assertions in the popular press, when LSD is administered as part of a therapeutic medical program, irreversible psychotic changes and brain damage do not occur. Certain irresponsible statements that it does produce such adverse effects have not been supported by valid scientific evidence. Like any other drug, LSD belongs in the hands of responsible medical authorities.
People can't believe that physicians, that the medical profession would do this to them. That's one reason this thing has grown to such colossal proportions. And they're not even finished yet.
And that's how the chemical imbalance theory started. Unfortunately, after decades of hype and promotion, Only the first part of their chemical imbalance theory, that you can create insanity with drugs, has proven correct, and tragically so. But seemingly unconcerned by the deadly flaws in their new unproven theory, psychiatrists and psychologists forged ahead anyway with their plans for a future where lives would be controlled through drugs. And the focus of their long-range efforts was the control of the behavior of children. In the same 1963 article, Coughlin reported on the so-called advancement of psychology and psychiatry, highlighting the views of what it described as one of the most influential figures in American psychology, B.F. Skinner. According to Coughlin, Skinner believed, and I'll quote, that human behavior can and ought to be controlled by scientists, because man merely has illusions that he possesses free will, and that actually all human behavior is caused by material events. Consequently, expert scientists owe it to humanity to take charge of events and arrange things so that people behaved in ways that were good for themselves. Unquote. Skinner disclosed his concept for how this would be done. He said, in the not-too-distant future, the motivational and emotional conditions of normal life will probably be maintained at any desirable level through the use of drugs. In December 1967's Psychopharmacology Bulletin, published by the National Institute of Mental Health, psychiatrist Nathan Klein wrote, "Man is an animal impelled by internal forces to act. Although for psychiatrists man is, and evidently always will be, an animal, Klein claimed that one feature separated humanity from others in the animal kingdom, that being the desire to take pills, and the psychiatric industry was eager to satisfy that desire." That same year, Klein co-authored a report called the Study Group for the Effects of Psychiatric Drugs on Normal Humans. The report stated, if we accept the position that human mood and emotion are reflections of chemicals in the brain, then drugs can provide a simple and rapid means to produce any desired chemical state that we wish. The sooner that we stop confusing scientific and moral statements about drug use, the sooner we can consider the types of brain chemical states that we wish to provide for people. This is where the idea for chemical balancers came from. Now, if you really think that all of your thoughts and all of your emotions and all of your reactions are just chemicals swirling together in different combinations, then you fully have bought into the idea of what these psychiatrists believed. It then would follow that you really don't even make your own decisions, because your decisions, too, would be a result of chemical reactions in the brain. This would extend to all of your emotions, both positive and negative. That report concluded, the present range of drug use may be almost trivial when we compare it to the possible numbers of chemical substances that will be available for the control of man's life in the year 2000. Now keep in mind, this was written in 1967.